Namaskar, I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. Welcome to Global Scan. Here we are, all set to say goodbye to 2020. So how are you going to remember the year? What comes to our mind naturally is perhaps the pandemic. It changed the world in so many ways, hasn't it? But when we take a closer look, 2020 had more to it. People across the world braved the pandemic, came out to vote. Many came out to protest for their rights. Smaller regional conflicts like Nagorno-Karabakh threatened escalation. Intensity and frequency of natural disasters increased. Now, 1 hour is never enough to get a glimpse of the year that was, but here's an attempt. Welcome to this special year-ender edition of Global Scan. Stay with us for the next 1 hour as we weave together stories of people, politics, nations and nature from 2020. Let's first begin with the highlights of the year. UK clinches Brexit agreement with EU ahead of December 31st deadline. PM Boris Johnson hails the deal, says everything that was promised during 2016 referendum delivered. European Commission says deal is fair and balanced. European Commission President terms deal as fair, balanced and right. Electoral College decisively confirms Joe Biden as the United States' next president. Gives him a solid majority of 306 electoral votes to Trump's 232, the same margin that Trump claimed was a landslide when he won White House 4 years ago. Biden says democracy prevailed, faith in our institutions held. Armenia and Azerbaijan reach agreement to end war in Nagorno-Karabakh. Russian President Putin confirms war end deal on Nagorno-Karabakh. The region had troubled history torn between aspirations of Armenia and Azerbaijan, both nations taking claims on the territory. Armenia and Azerbaijan were part of the erstwhile Soviet Union. World fights COVID-19. UK becomes the first country in the world to use Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine outside of a trial following rapid clinical approval. US President-elect Joe Biden outlines COVID-19 vaccine goal, says 100 million shots in the first 100 days in the office. Many other countries also approved Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. Nobel laureates receive prizes at home amid the pandemic. Nobel laureates in physics, chemistry, medicine, literature and economic sciences received their awards in their home countries for the first time since 1956. The Summer Olympics, originally planned to take place in Tokyo, had to be postponed due to COVID-19. For the first time, Olympics are being rescheduled because of the pandemic. In 1940, it was because of the looming war. Robert Lewandowski, meanwhile, ends Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo's dominance as Best FIFA Football Awards by claiming the men's their award. Unlike other cinematic events of 2020 that were postponed or cancelled due to coronavirus, award season still went ahead. Starting with the 77 Golden Globe Awards on January 5th, big winner at the Oscars was South Korean dark social satire Parasite. One of the biggest blows to cinema this year was the cancellation of Cannes Film Festival. 77th Venice International Film Festival took place at the start of September with strict coronavirus-safe measures in place. Now, from an unknown virus that originated in China to becoming the most familiar and dreaded word of the year, COVID-19, the biggest public health crisis of the century. The pandemic locked down nations' lives in an unprecedented manner. Now, social distancing is a norm, wearing masks a way of life. Vaccines have started coming as a beacon of hope, but also the virus is now mutating and creating new scares. Will the world ever be the same again?
It all started from Wuhan, and then within no time, it spread to all countries of the world. Such has been the journey of COVID-19, a contagious virus of unknown origin, causing flu-like and respiratory symptoms, was detected in Wuhan, China. It was on December 31, 2019 that China informed the World Health Organization about the patients having mysterious pneumonia. According to WHO, some patients were dealers or vendors in the seafood market. Later, the outbreak was identified as a new coronavirus. On January 11, China reported its first known death from an illness caused by coronavirus. The patient was a 61-year-old man in Wuhan. And just after a few days, the United States, along with other countries, confirmed the positive cases of COVID-19. On January 20, a World Health Organization situation report detailed the first confirmed cases outside China in Thailand, Japan, and South Korea. On January 23, 2020, Director General of WHO convened the first meeting of Emergency Committee regarding the novel coronavirus outbreak. China placed Wuhan, a city of 11 million people, under quarantine orders. All flights and trains departing from the city were cancelled and buses, subways and ferries within the city were suspended. On January 30, WHO declared the outbreak as a global public health emergency as more than 9,000 cases were reported worldwide, including in 18 countries beyond China. On the same day, India reported its first case of COVID-19 in Kerala. On January 31, the White House announced that it would ban the entry of most foreign nationals who had traveled to China within the last 14 days. On February 2nd, the first coronavirus death was reported outside China. A 44-year-old Wuhan resident died in Philippines, and even India reported second confirmed case in Kerala. On February 9, the death toll in mainland China rose to 811, surpassing the number of fatalities from the SARS outbreak in 2003. And then WHO announced that the disease caused by new coronavirus will be known officially as COVID-19. On February 24th, Italy became the worst hit country in Europe as cases spiked. Health officials announced the sixth death from the virus, and later it issued a lockdown to quarantine around 16 million people in country's northern region. As confirmed cases surpassed 5,800 and more than 230 people died from the virus. The area sealed off includes Milan and Venice. On March 11, the World Health Organization declared that the coronavirus outbreak can be characterized as pandemic, which is defined as worldwide spread of new disease for which most people do not have immunity. As the cases started rising across the globe, countries started announcing lockdowns. Borders were sealed. On March 22nd, India observed Janta curfew for a day, and just after 2 days, Prime Minister Narendra Modi ordered a 3-week lockdown. The government also imposed curfews, halted domestic travel and suspended train and bus services in many Indian states. Many countries even witnessed second wave. In the midst of all these, drug makers were busy making vaccines. And after approval, Britain became the first Western country to start vaccinating its general population in what was hailed as decisive watershed in defeating the coronavirus. Margaret Keenan, a 90-year-old grandmother from Britain, became the first person in the world to receive the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine outside of a trial following its rapid clinical approval. In US, the first shots were given in American mass vaccination campaign on December 14, opening a new chapter in battle against coronavirus. Canada also on December 9 approved the first COVID-19 vaccine, clearing the way for doses of Pfizer Inc. shots to be delivered and administered across the country. But soon after all these, London was placed under the country's highest level of COVID-19 restrictions as new virus variant was spotted among the rapidly rising infection rates. Streets and shops wore a deserted look in spite of Christmas round the corner. World Health Organization confirmed in a report that a new, more transmissible coronavirus variant had been found in United Kingdom. WHO said that initial analysis indicates that the variant has an estimated increase between 40% and 70% in transmissibility. The health organization also advised all countries to increase routine sequencing and share sequence data. Many countries have even suspended all flights from United Kingdom. Now all eyes are on vaccines. Will these help in getting rid of COVID-19 completely in 21 or not remains to be seen. Global Scan Desk, DD India.
So how did the pandemic change our lives? Difficult to answer that one. The infection spread like wildfire from one person, one community to another, to eventually every nation of the world, even Antarctica. Every nation struggled to control the peak, but then there were second, third or more waves of COVID-19 that followed. Office work became online, sports became without audiences, theatres shut, and economies nosedived. And well, it still isn't over.
The COVID-19 pandemic has led to a dramatic loss of human life worldwide and presents an unprecedented challenge to public health, food systems, and the world of work. The economic and social disruption caused by the pandemic is devastating. The UN framework for the immediate socio-economic response to COVID-19 crisis warns that the COVID-19 pandemic is far more than a health crisis. It is affecting societies and economies at their core. From child to youth, to professional to elderly, everyone is bearing the brunt of the pandemic. A funding crisis looms for public schools. Public school funding is tightly tied to enrollment, which is declining this year as parents look for alternatives. Parents are struggling to balance their own work with students' online classes. The COVID-19 pandemic has triggered the deepest economic recession in nearly a century, threatening health, disrupting economic activity and hurting well-being and jobs. Benchmark US crude futures plunged below zero for the first time in history in April as technical factors such as unusually high open interest coincided with fundamental factors including a shortage of storage options and an unprecedented collapse in demand due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Berlin became the first of next year's big European film festivals to bow to the coronavirus pandemic, announcing it would hold a reduced online-only program in March, a month later than usual, with an audience event in June. The festival, now in its 71st year, occupies a distinct position in the cinema calendar with its trade component. The European film market shaping how films and series are sold around the world and launching that year's co-productions as studio executives meet filmmakers. Bereft of an audience due to COVID-19 restrictions, the Paris Opera singers have decided to record their work on a dedicated website so as not to lose the benefit of rehearsals for a concert. The concert program includes works by young Mozart and 18th century French composers Chevalier de Saint-Jorge and André Gretry. Not being able to perform in front of an audience has become the new normal. Singer Aaron Pendleton said, but that once the COVID pandemic disappears, hopefully the normal for us artists, musicians will be very different, with more people eager to see live performances. To get things back on track, extraordinary policies are required to walk the tightrope towards recovery, which will shape the economic and social prospects of the coming decade. Global Scan Desk, DD India.
Let's now talk about the US presidential elections 2020, one of the most bitterly fought elections in the US history. Passions ran high, patience was tested to its limit, so much so that even the election results of November were not enough to convince President Donald Trump that his time in White House was over. What followed was a series of courtroom appeals and recounting. It only confirmed that Americans had spoken decisively. Joe Biden is to be the 46th President of the United States. His running mate hogged equal limelight. Kamala Harris became the first woman and the first Black and Asian American to be the Vice President-elect of the US. Battered by the pandemic, shaken by the anti-racism protests, Joe Biden's victory message reverberated across all corners. He said it was time to heal.
Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden finally won US presidency after a divisive election. His victory on November 7th in Pennsylvania put him over the threshold of 270 electoral college votes he needed to clinch the presidency, ending 4 days of nail-biting suspense and sending his supporters into the streets of major cities in celebration. Celebrations were witnessed all over. COVID-19 restrictions may have shut the pubs in the western Irish town of Ballina, but that did not stop Joe Biden's ancestral home from celebrating his presidential election victory. President-elect Joe Biden declared it was time to heal a deeply divided America in his first speech after winning a bitter election, even as President Donald Trump refused to concede and pressed ahead with legal fights against the outcome initially.
I'd like to provide the American people with an update on our efforts to protect the integrity of our very important 2020 election. If you count the legal votes, I easily win. If you count the illegal votes, they can try to steal the election from us. If you count the votes that came in late, we're looking at them very strongly, but a lot of votes came in late. I've already decisively won many critical states, including massive victories in Florida, Iowa, Indiana, Ohio. To name just a few, we won these and many other victories despite historic election interference from big media, big money, and big tech. As everybody saw, we won by historic numbers. And the pollsters got it knowingly wrong. They got it knowingly wrong. We had polls that were so ridiculous, and everybody knew it at the time. There was no blue wave that they predicted. They thought there was going to be a big blue wave. That was false. It was done for suppression reasons. But instead, there was a big red wave.
But later, members of the US Electoral College affirmed Joe Biden's presidential election victory, one of the final steps required for him to take office. The ballots were cast throughout the day in all 50 states and Washington, D.C. The former vice president has surpassed 270 electoral votes needed to clinch the White House after California, which has 55 electoral college votes, the most of any state, put Biden over the top. President-elect Joe Biden delivered a forceful rebuke to President Donald Trump's attacks on the legitimacy of his victory, hours after winning the state-by-state electoral college vote that officially determines the U.S. presidency.
Together, Vice President-elect Harris and I earned 306 electoral votes, well exceeding the 270 electoral votes needed to secure victory. 306 electoral votes is the same number of electoral votes that Donald Trump and Vice President Pence received when they won in 2016. Excuse me. At the time, President Trump called the Electoral College tally a landslide. By his own standards, these numbers represented a clear victory then, and I respectfully suggest they do so now.
I can't speak directly to that, but I will tell you that it has been the priority for the President-elect and me from the beginning that we intend to and will work across the aisle to deal with these most intractable issues that are affecting people regardless of who they voted for in the election. And I can tell you that the President-elect and I take that very seriously.
California, the most populous U.S. state, put Biden over the 270 votes needed to win the Electoral College when its 55 electors unanimously cast ballots for him and his running mate, Kamala Harris.
We did it, Joe. You're going to be the next president of the United States.
Biden and Harris, the first woman, first black person, and the first Asian American to become vice president-elect, will be sworn in on January 20th. Biden has even begun nominating members of his cabinet and the White House team, working to fulfill his promise to build an administration that reflects the United States' diversity. Global Scan Desk, DD India.
And seemingly endless negotiations between Britain and the European Union ended on December 24th when the duo announced that they had struck a post-Brexit trade and security deal which will reshape relations between the two allies. The deal will allow hundreds of billions of dollars in goods to continue to flow without tariffs or quotas, but a lot more red tape between Britain and the 27 remaining nations in the EU. Following the deal, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson held a news conference where he said that Britain has taken back control of its laws and destiny. He added that this deal means a new stability and a new certainty in what has sometimes been a fractious and difficult relationship. He stressed that although Britain has left the EU, but they will remain culturally, emotionally, historically, strategically, and geologically attached to Europe.
We've taken back control of our laws and our destiny. We've taken back control of every jot and tittle of our regulation in a way that is complete and unfettered. From January the 1st, we are outside the customs union and outside the single market. British laws will be made solely by the British Parliament, interpreted by UK judges sitting in UK courts, and the jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice will come to an end.
And European Commission President termed the deal as fair, balanced and right and worth fighting for. She expressed hope that the deal will set a solid foundation for a new start with a long-term friend.
It was a long and winding road, but we have got a good deal to show for it. It is fair, it is a balanced deal, and it is the right and responsible thing to do for both sides.
On to our next big story. The conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan threatened to spark bigger crisis in the Caucasus region this year. A peace deal has been agreed, prisoners exchanged, but over 5,000 people were killed in a matter of weeks, and the region still remains fragile. The situation is further complicated by the geopolitics, with Turkey on one side and Russia on the other.
Bugün səhər Ermənistan silahlı qüvvələri
This morning, the armed forces of Armenia, using various types of weapons, including heavy artillery, fired on our settlements as well as military positions from several directions. As a result of the enemy shelling, there are casualties among the civilian population and military personnel.
Düşmən atəşi nəticəsində mülki əhali və hərbçilərimiz arasında itkilər var.
Այսօր վաղ առավոտից
Today in the early morning, Republic of Artsakh has been subjected to aggression by armed forces of Azerbaijan. The civilian population of Artsakh, the capital of Stefankert, the civilian infrastructure of Republic of Artsakh are bombarded. At the moment, there are already casualties and wounded, including among the civilian population.
այդ թվում խաղաղ բնակչության շրջանում.
And thus, the long-standing rift between Azerbaijan and Armenia over Nagorno-Karabakh in the Caucasus region erupted once again into a large-scale conflict in September 2020. Images reminiscent of the war between the two neighbors in 1991 after the Soviet Union collapsed. After weeks of military operations that led to the killing of over 5,000 people, both soldiers and civilians, a Russia-brokered ceasefire appears to have brought some peace to the region for now. Nagorno-Karabakh has had a troubled history, torn between the aspirations of Armenia and Azerbaijan, both nations staking claim on the territory. Armenia and Azerbaijan were part of the erstwhile Soviet Union. The contested Nagorno-Karabakh was an autonomous region under the control of Azerbaijan, with ethnic Armenians as the majority of the population. As the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, the two neighbors went to war. By the time a ceasefire was declared, Armenia had managed to capture Nagorno-Karabakh and some surrounding districts. Since then, Nagorno-Karabakh remained a part of Azerbaijan but was controlled by Armenian majority-backed government. The region remained unstable and vulnerable to violence. Over the years, tens of thousands were killed in ethnic massacres from both sides, many more uprooted from their homes. Mediation by international powers failed to bring sustainable peace to the region. In September this year, a fresh offensive was launched by Azerbaijan. President Aliyev vowing to take back Nagorno-Karabakh and other regions under Armenian control. Backed by military aid from allied Turkey, Azerbaijan managed to take some 40% of Nagorno-Karabakh during 6 weeks of fighting. While Azerbaijan was bolstered by the support from Turkey, Russia, a security partner of Armenia, remained neutral in the early days of the conflict. As the conflict threatened to spill beyond the contested region of Nagorno-Karabakh with increasing Turkish influence in the region, it risked dragging in the big regional powers, Russia and Turkey, and destabilizing the South Caucasus region, an important corridor for pipelines carrying oil and gas. Moscow pushed for a ceasefire.
Конечно, это огромная трагедия. Люди гибнут.
We have agreed, and it is well known in the framework of the trilateral agreement, that military action stops and the parties remain at the position where they were when the agreement was signed. And the next thing after reaching ceasefire should be full normalization of the relations in the region.
И я еще раз хочу об этом сказать. Призываем.
According to the key terms of the ceasefire, Armenia agreed to withdraw troops from territories captured by Azerbaijan. The core enclaves with ethnic Armenian population will remain outside the control of Azerbaijan. Some 2,000 Russian peacekeeping troops will be stationed in the region. The war has altered the balance of power in favor of Azerbaijan. The losses on the Armenian side have increased pressure on Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan, whom the opposition accuses of mishandling the conflict, to resign. The status of Nagorno-Karabakh remains relatively quiet, yet unsettled. Global Scan Desk, DD India.
2020, the year of lockdown and social distancing, still had many occasions for people to gather and march together for justice. Many of the protests centered around familiar themes that dominated people's movement in recent years, like corruption, systemic discrimination, state violence, marches for racial justice in Black Lives Matter movement, women marching together in Poland to claim rights over their own bodies. Thai youth answered police brutality and water cannons with yellow inflatable ducks. Here's more. The image of 46-year-old African-American man George Floyd handcuffed and pinned to the ground by a white police officer's knee. As George succumbed to the brutality, America and the world woke up to a nightmare. Racism is real, systemic and brutal. This was May of 2020. The explosive footage of George Floyd's killing spread widely on social media, and so did collective outrage, adding fire to the Black Lives Matter movement in the US. In the coming days, tens of thousands of people stormed the streets demanding arrest of the cops responsible and demanding justice for black people assaulted and killed by white policemen. But the problem of racial discrimination and violence was not of America alone. What started on the streets of Minneapolis soon spread all over the world, where people flocked the streets for days asking for justice against racism. The days ahead saw toppling of statues of former colonial trespassers to bringing down racially insensitive administration. More protests raged across the world as people hit the streets to demand accountability from those in power. Pro-democracy protest in Thailand, abortion protest in Poland, anti-government protest in Belarus. Thailand witnessed mass anti-government protest. The student-led protesters warned Thai Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha to step down, the constitution be amended to make it more democratic, and reforms to the monarchy to have it conform to democratic norms. The government has sought to weaken the protesters' resolve by arresting their leaders, declaring a state of emergency for Bangkok that made all rallies illegal, and trying to physically impede their gatherings. Giant yellow rubber ducks became the symbol of Thai pro-democracy rallies, as inflatables were taken on marches to mock at authorities and defend against police violence. The Poland abortion protest started after the country's government banned women from getting abortion. Protests erupted in the country that brought the government to its knees. Poland's right-wing government had passed a law essentially banning all abortions in the country, prompting the largest protests in the country had seen since the fall of Russian communism. More than 100,000 people, mostly women, marched the streets with gay abandon, demanding the government roll back the draconian law that prohibited them from being masters of their own bodies. The Belarusian protests were a direct reaction to President Alexander Lukashenko's wanting to secure a sixth term in the office. The protests initially began as a reaction to the 2020 presidential elections, in which President Alexander Lukashenko sought his sixth term in office. Following the election, Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, Lukashenko's main opponent, rejected the results and claimed instead to have received most of the votes. Few days later, the European Union also published a statement rejecting the legitimacy of the elections. Bureau Report, DD India. Every passing year, our planet, its climate and environment is also changing. Its impact is visible in more intense, more frequent natural calamities. The bushfires in Australia and California, forest fires in Amazon continue to rage. 1 billion animals, can you imagine, were wiped out in Australia alone. Then the devastating cyclone Amphan in Bay of Bengal, one of the strongest in the region in decades. Earthquakes, volcanic eruptions and more.
From raging bushfires in Australia and California to the devastating cyclone Amphan to the deadly earthquake in Turkey. While 2020 may be remembered as the year of the COVID pandemic, major natural calamities caused large-scale destruction in different parts of the world. In 2020, the people of Australia fought two evils, coronavirus and the massive bushfires. Australia began the new year on a tumultuous note. Widespread and severe fires causing extensive damage to the local ecosystem, blanketing communities and surrounding regions in smoke. The season was dubbed the Black Summer due to unusually prolonged and intense bushfires that burnt nearly 12 million hectares, killed 33 people and 1 billion animals. According to a long-awaited report into the country's bushfires, Australia must prepare for an alarming future of simultaneous and worsening natural disasters. Cyclone Amphan, considered to be the second major cyclone in the Bay of Bengal after the super cyclone of 1999, hit West Bengal in India in the month of May. The cyclone also left a trail of massive destruction of property before moving to Bangladesh. The cyclone left many homeless, snapped electricity, internet connections and other communication tools in large parts of the state. Large-scale damage to infrastructure, public and private property was reported. Amidst large-scale evacuations, millions of people in Odisha were also affected by the extremely severe cyclonic storm. A major earthquake hit the Aegean Sea near the Turkish city of Izmir, in which 116 people were killed and over 1,000 people injured. The deaths were recorded in Izmir, Turkey's third largest city, as well as on the Greek island of Samos, which lies to the south of the epicenter of the earthquake. The US Geological Survey registered the quake's magnitude at 7. The tremors were felt across western Turkey, including in Istanbul as well as in the Greek capital city of Athens, followed by some 1,700 aftershocks. Wildfires in California have burnt over 1 million hectares of land area, over twice the previous record for any year. The most populous US state has suffered 5 of its 6 largest wildfires in history this year, as heat waves and dry lightning sieges coincided with dry conditions that climate scientists blame on global warming. At least 31 people died in this year's fires and over 8,000 homes and other structures have been destroyed. Many more natural calamities struck different parts of the world in 2020. Amazon forest fires continue to rage, destructive floods in Assam and Japan, and the earthquake in Mexico. Thousands of tremors rocking Antarctica, to name a few. Experts blame the intensity and frequency of disasters on climate change, bringing attention to whether enough was done by the international community to save the planet, even as the world observed the 5th anniversary of the Paris Climate Accord. Global Scan Desk, DD India.
Moving on to some other stories of 2020, we now bring you all the action and the big news from the world of sports.
The Summer Olympics, originally planned to take place in Tokyo, had to be postponed due to COVID-19. For the first time, the Olympics have been rescheduled due to a pandemic. In 1940, it was because of a looming war. Rafael Nadal won his 13th French Open title, crushing Novak Djokovic in straight sets in the 2020 men's final on clay. The championship added to Nadal's record for most French Open titles, and the 34-year-old now boasts of a 102 career record at Roland Garros. With another clay court trophy, Nadal has matched Roger Federer, his longtime rival, with 20 Grand Slam titles. Lewis Hamilton wrote his name into the Formula One record books with a victory in the Turkish Grand Prix. The Britons secured a 7th World Championship title, equaling Michael Schumacher's record. Jehan Daruwala created history as he became the first Indian to win a F2 race. In a sprint in Sakhir, Daruwala finished ahead of the likes of Mike Schumacher and Dan Ticktum. Milwaukee Bucks star Giannis Antetokounmpo has signed a contract extension worth a reported $228.2 million, the richest in NBA history. The two-time most valuable player has agreed for a 5-year deal. Kobe Bryant, who won 5 NBA championships with the Los Angeles Lakers and was considered one of basketball's all-time greats, was killed in a helicopter crash near Los Angeles along with 4 others on board. Argentinian football legend Diago Armando Maradona, one of the greatest players of all time, has died after suffering a heart attack. He was 60. Maradona, who has played for Barcelona, was captain of the national team when Argentina won the 1986 World Cup, scoring the famous Hand of God goal against England in the quarterfinals. Robert Lewandowski ended Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo's dominance at the Best FIFA Football Awards by claiming the Men's Players Award. The Bayern Munich forward won a top prize for the first time following a sensational year as the Bundesliga giants won the treble. Liverpool boss Jurgen Klopp was recognized for leading Liverpool to their first Premier League title by being named the best men's coach for the second consecutive year. Much to the surprise of his fan, Indian World Cup winning captain MS Dhoni announced his retirement from international cricket on August. Posting a video on Instagram, Dhoni, who last donned the blue jersey against New Zealand in the 2019 World Cup semi-final loss, thanked his fans for their love and support while announcing his retirement. In his 16-year-long career, Dhoni played 350 one-day internationals, scoring 10,773 runs at an average of 50.58. The 39-year-old wicketkeeper also played 90 test matches and 98 T20 internationals, scoring 4,876 at an average of 38.09 in tests and 1,617 runs at an average of 37 in T20s. The ICC announced the Women's World Cup 22 schedule. India will open their campaign against a qualifier on March 6th at Bay Oval. The opening match of the Women's World Cup will be between New Zealand and a qualifier on March 4th at the Bay Oval.
After sports, let's take a look back at the world of cinema in 2020. Theatres shut due to the pandemic, but not creativity. Here's to the world of drama and storytelling.
Unlike other cinematic events of 2020 that were postponed or cancelled due to the novel coronavirus pandemic, awards sessions still went ahead, starting with the 77th Golden Globe Awards on the 5th of January. Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood won 3 awards, including Best Motion Picture, Musical or Comedy, and Best Drama, and Best Director went to Sam Mendes' British war film 1917. Joaquin Phoenix took home Best Actor in a Drama Award for his performance in Joker, and Renée Zellweger won for her portrayal of Judy Garland in Judy. The sparing of awards continued as Phoenix and Zellweger picked up the same gongs at the BAFTAs on 2nd February and the Academy Awards on 9th February. The former saw Mendes again scoop Best Film and Best Director, with 1917 receiving 7 awards in total. Meanwhile, the big winner at the Oscars was South Korean dark social satire Parasite, which received 4 gongs, including Best Picture and Best Director for director Boon Joon-ho, who became the first person from the Asian nation to win the award. At the 92nd Academy Awards, Elton John won his 2nd Oscar for Music, Original Song, and delivered a memorable performance of the winning song, I'm Gonna Love Me Again, during the ceremony. Brad Pitt picked up Best Supporting Actor for his part in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Stars including Johnny Depp, Sigourney Weaver, Kate Blanchett and Hillary Clinton were welcomed to Berlin to walk the red carpet as part of the 78th Berlinale Film Festival on 20th February. 2020's edition of the Berlinale opened with film My Salingaya, starring Weaver, screening out of competition. Depp was in town to promote his new movie Minamata, also screening out of competition. Blanchett screened her series Stateless, and Clinton presented director Nanette Burstein's documentary series Hillary, which premiered at Sundance. One of the biggest blows to cinema this year was the cancellation of Cannes Film Festival. The 77th Venice International Film Festival took place at the start of September with strict coronavirus safe measures in place. Chloe Zhao's Nomadland, starring Frances McDormand, received the Golden Lion Award, for which 18 titles competed. British actress Tilda Swinton was honoured with Lifetime Achievement Award. It's not all doom and gloom for Hollywood, as next year is set to be a year of massive blockbuster releases, with many long-awaited sequels hitting the screens in spring and summer 2021. Global Scan Desk, DD India.
Well, we have quite a ground to cover. A quick scan of other important stories of 2020 in Fast Forward.
Yoshida Suga was elected as Japan's Prime Minister in September, becoming the first new leader in nearly 8 years and facing a raft of challenges, including reviving an economy battered by the COVID-19 crisis. Ghana's President Akufo-Addo won a second term with a narrow 51% majority over former President John Mahama, who managed to get 47% of the votes. Akufo-Addo promised to implement a $17 billion program to boost growth in one of West Africa's largest economies. Burkina Faso's President Roch Kabore won his re-election by a comfortable margin as per preliminary results declared in November, after an election marred by insecurity that prevented swathes of the West African country from voting. Australia's government will now have the power to veto any deal struck between local authorities and foreign governments after local lawmakers approved the legislation on the 3rd of December. Under the terms of the new law, Australia's foreign minister can veto agreements made by local institutions if they adversely affect Australia's foreign relations or are inconsistent with Australian foreign policy. Former French President Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, a key architect of European integration in the early 1970s, died at the age of 94. Giscard, who was France's leader from 1974 to 1981, had been hospitalized in Tours, in western France, and was being treated in the cardiology unit, according to Europe 1 Radio, which first reported his death. Giscard was known for steering a modernization of French society during his presidency, including allowing divorce by mutual consent and legalizing abortion, and was one of the architects of European integration. SpaceX's Starship rocket prototype exploded during a return landing attempt on December 9 minutes after an apparently uneventful test launch from the company's facility in Boca Chica, Texas. A live video of the flight showed. Russia successfully test-launched its heavy-lift Angara A-5 space rocket after a 6-year hiatus in a project President Vladimir Putin described as having huge significance for national security. First test launched in 2014, it is being developed to replace the Proton-M as Russia's heavy-lift rocket, capable of carrying payloads bigger than 20 tons into orbit. A launch pad for the new rocket is due to open in 2021. Scottish author Douglas Stewart won the 2020 Booker Prize for his acclaimed debut novel Shuggie Bain, set in his home city of Glasgow. The 44-year-old Stewart, who won £55,000, is only the second Scot to have won the prestigious literary award. The world's most prestigious Nobel Prize ceremony was held this year with simplicity due to the corona epidemic. Nobel laureates in physics, chemistry, medicine, literature and economic sciences received their awards in their home countries for the first time since 1956. Nobel Prize in Literature was given to the American poet Louis Glueck in an event organized at the laureates' gardens. The winners received their awards from the Swedish diplomat. A powerful blast in port warehouses near central Beirut, storing highly explosive material, killed some 200 people and injured thousands. It sent seismic shockwaves that shattered windows, smashed masonry, and shook the ground across the Lebanese capital.
And beyond big stories of politics, nations and public movements, life also unfolded in unseen ways around us this year. We now present a bouquet of such stories of inspiration, stories beyond headlines.
Surrounded by cotton wool, wires and colorful paints, Ukrainian artist Mariana Gerashenko is at the peak of the festive season, handicrafting Christmas tree figurines in a home-based studio inspired by memories of a Christmas tree at her grandmother's house. Gerashenko, 56, revives an old tradition of creating Christmas decorations with simple materials. The pieces of cotton wool soaked in a wheat paste and wrapped around copper wire make the body of the figurine. A tiny clay face is shaped with the help of a mold, and in the last step the artist brings the facial features to life with gentle brushstrokes of paint. Hundreds of Cubans paid homage to a Catholic saint who doubles as a powerful deity in the Afro-Cuban Santiera faith, calling on the holy figure to free the country of coronavirus. The Saint Lazarus pilgrimage is one of the most important religious events on the island nation, melding Afro-Cuban faiths with Roman Catholic beliefs. Devotees of Saint Lazarus flock to the shrine at a church near the village of El Rincon in the countryside near Havana. And health was a major request for many faithful. St. Lazarus is associated with helping the sick, and many of the pilgrims go to ask the saint to cure relatives' ailments. Others make long, hard journeys barefoot and hold themselves along the ground on their hands and knees. Orchids are not often called ugly, but that is how the Royal Botanic Garden in Kew, London, described the new species of the normally vibrant and delicate flower discovered in the forests of Madagascar. Gastrodia agnicellis, one of 156 plants and fungal species named by Kew scientists and their partners around the world in 2020, has been crowned the ugliest orchid in the world. Although assessed as a threatened species, the plants have some protection because they are located in the national park. Among the other discoveries, officially named this year, were a species of webcap toadstool mushroom, discovered along the river on the boundary of Heathrow Airport in the United Kingdom, and a strange shrub encountered in southern Namibia in 2010. While around 2,000 plants are named new to science annually, new families are only published around once a year. As coronavirus cases surge across California, a Los Angeles holiday-themed drive-through experience is allowing visitors to enjoy a traditional Christmas light display from the safety of their own cars. A display called Holidays Around the Globe features houses decorated to represent holidays in Mexico and China, and the Jewish holiday of Hanukkah. Wonderland opened on November 30 and runs until December 30, with 2 days off on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. Inspiration for high fashion can come from strange places. For one Taiwanese designer, it's upcycling old wires and bolts from the power industry. Wang Li Ling, 36, scars dumps, picking up old bits of metal and wires from Taiwan's main electricity supplier to add extra flair to her clothes. The wires and other materials are stitched onto dresses and other items of clothing, giving them a futuristic feeling and drawing a warm reception at a fashion show in Taipei. A popular destination for trendy tourists in pre-coronavirus times, Taiwan has an up-and-coming fashion scene whose designers are starting to make an impact on the world stage.
That was all about 2020. But what does that say about the new year, 2021? We'll now look at some of the key themes that we think are likely to dominate the new year. First up, looking ahead 2021, COVID vaccine and the end of the pandemic. Will 2021 mark the end of the COVID pandemic? Well, we all hope so. People have started getting vaccines. Equitable distribution of vaccine and public health infrastructure in poorer countries is a challenge. New strains and mutations of the virus are also reported. Will masks and hand sanitizers become a part of our lives? 2021 may have the answers. Let's look at the next theme that is going to dominate the new year. Biden's America and global leadership. As Biden takes over as the 46th President of the United States, a challenging term lies ahead of him. Rescuing Americans from the pandemic, of course, will be a priority, but also resetting American policy for the world, from climate change to trade war with China to ties with Europe. The manner in which the new US President tackles these crucial issues will have repercussions for the world. Let's look at the next theme, looking ahead 2021. Peace and security in the Indo-Pacific region. The world watched closely as China's expansionist ambitions brought Chinese and Indian soldiers face to face in Ladakh. For now, talks have been given precedence. Besides, a series of defense, trade and foreign policy disputes appeared between China and Australia. These instances and many others have raised concerns about managing peace and security in the Indo-Pacific region. Moving on, climate challenge and the mitigation. A climate change challenge and mitigation is going to be crucial. The challenge grows bigger with every passing year. We got a glimpse of how nature got back at humanity in 2020. Will 2021 be any different? The progress in the first 5 years of Paris Climate Agreement has not been encouraging. Now, will America returning to the world grouping make a difference? Perhaps the answer lies in 2021 and beyond. Moving on, we're looking at the possibilities and themes of 2021, sporting extravaganza of Olympics 2021. Now, while 2020 was marked by lockdowns, calling off of public congregations, sporting events, in fact, in an unprecedented turn of events, many tournaments and biggest of them all, Olympics, was postponed. 2021 may be about reclaiming the world. All eyes will be on Tokyo Olympics 2021, how our sports stars compete and celebrate the flight of the human spirit. And that brings us to the close of this special edition of Global Scan. We leave you with images that define this year and our lives. From the entire team of Global Scan, we wish you good health, good life and a good year. Take care of yourself. We'll now see you in 2021. Namaskar.